Hey, very good evening to you traders. Mark here from Daytrading Room. Time is 20 past 8 in the evening, London time on a Sunday. Hope you're all very well. I'm going to talk about a couple of trades from last week. I traded the DAX quite a lot more than the Dow. In fact, it's more than the Dow. First time this year, I think, in a week period, I've traded the DAX more actively than I have the Dow, purely because the ranges are last week the ranges were much larger. And if you look at this here, and by the way, you can access all this information on the pre-market note tab just there in the mornings, or US morning should I say. Before the open, I just put some of my thoughts and things and data for the day, some risk events to look out for, and etc. But anyway, here's what I wanted to point out. Look at the daily session ranges. Dow dash daily session range. Now appreciate this is the cash session, so it's a much less period of time, but I suspected if you included 24-hour, this would be the case. Showing you in points range for the day, so high minus low. Look how much larger the DAX is, and yes, again, appreciate that this is we're talking a much larger time period, but even so, it's lower priced index. You can double that for the amount of ticks that it's moved. It's moving a serious amount. And if we scroll down to here, which is more interesting, the maximum distance away from the VWAP cash session, 60-minute intervals, so it's not quite real time, but it's close enough for the YM. You can see this is how far we get away from the VWAP most of the time. We've sort of got a mean around 60 or so just by eyeball there. And then down here, the DAX stats, you can see far more instances of above 80, and that's double that for ticks away from the VWAP. So that sort of quantifies why it's been more of an active market. But anyway, I want to talk about these two specific trades, and one sort of lended itself to the other. It gave me information for the other, despite it being the next day. So let's have a look. Okay, so DAX was, let's get these on the right day, so we're talking about the same thing here. Okay, here we are. So data came out. This is the Thursday, the 6th of March. So it's the day before non-farm payrolls. Cast your mind back. I'll put on a 15 minutes so you can see where we're at with this. Thursday of last week. So the Russian sell-off, as I call it, on Monday. This is the Ukraine news. Tuesday, everything's fine. We're back to normal. We chugged above high. We held there. We had one day of very low range, especially on the YM, and Tuesday as well, the afternoon, very low range. So I'm going to Thursday thinking we might get a range expansion, and although I'm also mindful that we have non-farm payrolls the day after, which is the Friday. So I quite like the fact, and something that I thought in my mind was, okay, the premise, if we dip below some sort of, out of this range one way or another, and then come back into it, I'm going to take a play looking for a break at the other end of the range. In other words, it happens to be there's a downside. We broke through the downside here, put a nice wick in on the 15-minute, probe straight back up. Decent volume. Look at that. All the longs that are in from there all the way up to there are going to be stopped out, and I thought, great, nice fuel for the fire. I'll start scaling as we push up to this point here. Let's get a drawing pen out so we can be clearer. To this point here, and looking for this point here. That's the sort of thesis I had for the trade. All very well and good, but actually you can see what happened. We'll stick to 5 minutes so we can make this a little bit clearer. Let's scroll back here. So I'm long now. We pushed up here, and I'm long from somewhere around here. Quite late into it, if I'm honest. But I got higher targets. I don't really mind too much being a little bit late into it. It's not a sort of very aggressive scalp position. More of, I wouldn't have minded holding it for a couple of hours to let it play out and hit the targets that I've after. So we did exactly what we thought. We broke through the low, we pushed back up, and here we are. We're chugging back up. So first stop VWAP, all very well and good. Let's take a scale off. Let's look for some more upside. And look what happened with the Dow at this same point in time. And this is very telling. I'm watching the Dow at this time thinking, okay, let's just look at the clock here. So we're at the VWAP 14:15 UK time. That's actually not right. The trade station's been messing around with my time stamps here, but forget that for now. It doesn't matter. We'll just keep it the same. So 14:15. Let's look what the Dow was doing at that point in time. 14:15. There we are. 14:15. Okay. Now that point there, the Dow, the next 4 or 5 bars pushes back up to highs. Look at the next 4 or 5 bars here for the DAX. It does not push to highs. In fact, the thing goes down. Yeah, so I'm long the DAX at the moment, and I see the Dow and I see the ES pushing back to highs, holding the VWAP, thinking, okay, this DAX is very, very light now, especially with those people trapped, to take out those highs, and I'll be able to get, sell it to those panic buyers there, and then look for the further scales to the upside. It didn't happen. It rolled back over, and I was forced to cover it, at a break even or even a slight loss. I think, if I'm casting my mind back, even with the scale, because I was watching this pushing up and thinking, okay, this is this is looking okay. The rest of the market's looking fine. Let's give this DAX a good shove now. It didn't go. Took the trade out. No real harm done. But from that point, it just makes you think how weak a specific market is. If even after faking out, taking out all those stops there, we actually then drift lower, even though the rest of the markets are, yes, excuse me, is all-time highs. Dow's holding above the VWAP, admittedly very tight range, but it's there anyway. But DAX is rolling over, and it's not even positive, but the Dow is above the prior day's high. You've got to take that. You've got to remember that in your mind. And okay, I was one of the ones that was caught long on that, or not caught long, but stopped long on that trade there. But it actually gave me a lot of information for the next day, and I'll run through this quickly because we're 6 minutes into the video. But let's have a look. Next day, non-farm payrolls. Here we go. All right, non-farm payrolls is here. Out they come. 1:30 UK time. Bing. Off we go. Pop. We pop up. We just go. Excuse me. Go positive on the DAX. And then what I always watch out for is if we had a response that's positive or a response that's negative, for the market to come back to that level. I don't want it to come back to the level. In fact, let's make this full size now. We're done with the Dow. That was just a reference from yesterday. Okay, we'd push up to there. We're holding okay. Everything's fine. And you're expecting it really when there's a good number like there was on Friday, and there's a good response from equities, negative response from gold, a nice cross section, usual scenario for this to push up, pull back, and then plod on to take out highs. But bearing in mind yesterday, it wasn't something I was looking for. It wasn't something I was looking to take. I was trading gold during the non-farm payrolls, but that's by the by. This then became an alert for me. Hey, you know what? We can't even hold positive on a good number. We can't even take out the high. This is weak. So I draw a line here. This is the non-farm payroll line in the sand. And I always do this on markets when we've had a significant data coming out, some sort of reprice scenario. I like to put a line there, or I like to put a mark there, or whatever you want to do, that says that's the level we were at before the data came out. If the market rolls back under that data, everyone's in trouble. All the people that bought here are in trouble. All the people who are confused buying here, thinking, what's going on? The number was great, all of the markets are looking great, are going to be stopped. It just adds loads of fuel. But nevertheless, I'm still not that keen on just selling straight into that there. However, I see this low here, and I start to think to myself, this looks like it could really set up nicely. And look where the low is in the scheme of things. We are really almost back to the everything's happy with Ukraine low, and that gets me excited. I like that setup a lot. It's one of my favourite setups, when something doesn't happen, everyone's aboard it, and then we just get a full reversal, intraday sentiment reversal. You can't beat it from a trading perspective. Now, I'm not going to go into any more significant details into this, but that was the premise of the trade. We started to roll over here, and the tape just looked like absolute death. It just looked so bad that I was happy enough to time it based purely on the tape and say, okay, the tape looks so bad here, let me wait for a stall, wait for a stall, wait for a stall. It pushed down, it pushed down, it pushed down. Finally, we got a stall around this point here. I can't even remember. I haven't got my platform, my other broker platform open to look, but somewhere around here. Anyway, it was nowhere near, the high. It was somewhere between basically there and before this low. I don't know, it's quite a big range, but you bear with me on that. And the tape just looked like awful, just awful. We got a slight pause in tape, and I could just see sellers stacked there sitting, and I just had to get short. It was just a perfect lined up scenario. Yes, if it had popped up, I would have cut it straight away, ditched it, taken the loss. But the timing was great on that. It just rolled over beautifully, and as it rolled, I was disciplined enough to say there's a lot of weight behind this. The likelihood of us taking out that low now is very, very high. Hold on to the full position. So I'm holding on to the full position. We roll over, we roll over, we roll over. I'm scaling out as we go through that low, feeding into the stops, feeding into the stops, and then finally I know we've got this low up here nearby. Let's put it on as a line. I'm going to have to use this because I've shrunk my screen slightly to fit all this in. I've got that in my mind. I say yes, that's the week's low there, and we've got some momentum behind it. Just hold the last couple. Just hold the last couple. Broke through. The tape just looked like death. Bids went thin. We just collapsed and just covered it into that. Yes, we went lower later on in the day, but fine. You know, for me, that was a nice trade. It was less than a 5-minute period. But the point was, I took the information from yesterday. The DAX was weak. We already had that behind us. The fact that it was very, very weak. We had the fact that the non-farm payroll data was good, and we couldn't even break through the highs. Confirmed as weak. There's number 2. We roll over. We take out the non-farm payroll starting print, number 3. So now we're really rolling. Then the tape just looks like death. Number 4, that's a full house for as far as I'm concerned. Yes, I'm always going to keep the risk managed. If it popped up, cut it. I'm not going to sit with it stubbornly while it rips the highs on me. But it just worked well. Timed it. Wait for the pause. The fact that the pause was quite late in the day didn't really matter. It's just a higher probability trade setup. And then yeah, looking for it to break the lows, breaks the lows, taking out into the lows, holding on for the weekly low to break. Weekly low breaks, scale it out. You very rarely get the low on the DAX. It's so thin unless you're already in the book. It just sweeps the book, leaves a vacuum, pops back up. But that's good enough for me. Take it out, and that's a nice 40, 80 tick trade, which on the DAX is very good. So that's just one I wanted from last week to go through. Hopefully you got some insight into the thought process behind that, and I'll be looking out for those in the future. I think next week headline risk, be cautious of that. But good trading, keep the risk managed, and we'll be back with another video soon. Take care.